here? Perfect. Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to the Prairie Conservation Action Plan's Native Prairie Speaker Series. My name is Kayla Balderson-Burak, and I'm the manager here at the Saskatchewan Prairie Conservation Action Plan. So every month, PCAP asks someone to present either in the form of a webinar or an in-person talk at a particular venue on anything to do with native prairie conservation or species at risk. This presentation will also be uploaded onto our YouTube page, so keep your eyes open for that and feel free to pass the link around to anyone you know that might be interested in this presentation or that missed it. At the end of the presentation, I'll show you where the links to all of our Prairie Speaker Series presentations are found on our website. So there are about 50 people registered for this webinar, so that's great. Thank you everyone for joining. Keep your eyes open for our newsletter and our social media outlets for the registration link for our next Speaker Series presentations that will take place via webinar. We have a couple in-person presentations coming up October 3rd in Weyburn. We will be having an in-person presentation with Phil Rose, a Master's of Science candidate at the University of Regina, who is studying the development of management targets for grassland songbirds. I will show you the links again on our Facebook and our website where you can find out more information about these presentations. So if you do have any questions during the presentation, on the left-hand side of your webinar pop-up menu, there is a place to type in any questions, so feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation, and then I will moderate them at the end. So I would like to take a moment to note that in-kind support for this project has been given by the South of the Divide Conservation Action Program. Now, this project was undertaken with the financial support of the Government of Canada and the Federal Department of Environment and Climate Change Canada. Now, a bit about our presenter, Tom Harrison. Tom has a BSA and an MSc from the College of Agriculture at the University of Saskatchewan. Tom has worked with Agriculture Canada, the Saskatchewan Indian Agriculture Program, Saskatchewan Wetland Conservation Program, the Water Security Agency as a private consultant as well. He is currently contracted as the Executive Director of SODCAP. Tom and his wife Tracy own and manage a 250-head cow-calf operation north of Lumsden, Saskatchewan. So I now pass the presentation over to Tom, and he will take it away for us.
Thanks very much, Kayla, and for inviting SODCAP to participate in the Native Prairie speakers presentation, whatever the formal name of that is, and also welcome to the people that have sat in on this webinar today, and hope you enjoy it. I have been the executive director for SODCAP going on, it'll be 2 years come, sort of the end of October this year. And one of the first things that we did when I started, and I say we because there was a number of us working on this, is we started to interview producers in the Southwest, and particular people that owned and managed critical habitat for species at risk. And when we started getting some of the discussion back from the producers, it was clear there was a few points that was coming up that was constant. Excuse me. And one of them is that there was skepticism and a reluctance to discuss species at risk. And I think this was in part fueled by the EPO at the time, and but there still was some reluctance to discuss species at risk in the Southwest. The other thing was that producers, kept saying to us is that we feel like our grass management is good, and what specifically do you really want from us? What are you actually asking over and above what good grass management would be? And after our discussions, we understood that producers have different goals and different objectives, different resources base, there was 13 species, identified in the action plan down in that area, and so it was quite evident that one size does not fit all when it comes to programming for species at risk on the agricultural landscape. So what we thought at the time was that we should let the producers use their innovative, independent nature to help find solutions for species at risk management in that part of the world. And so what we did was we put together a proposal, and we submitted it to Environment Canada, and in particular to their Species at Risk Partnership on a Agricultural Landscape Fund. And we did it in partnership with one of our board members, the Saskatchewan Stockgrowers Association. And lo and behold, we got funded, and we got funded for a 5-year project to basically look at programming options for species at risk. And that began, a little over a year ago that we started working on that. So today I'm going to be talking about that project and bringing you up to speed on some of the work. But first, what I'd like to do is just a little bit about SODCAP. It was created to be an implementation agent for the multi-species at risk action plan for the South Divide in Southwest Saskatchewan. It's been formed running for, like I said, for a couple of years now. I'm the executive director, and I answer to a board of directors of 8 plus 2 non-voting members. So right now we've got not only the stock growers, but we've got Sustainable Canada, we've got the Rancher Stewardship Alliance Inc., Nature Conservancy, SaskPower, Crescent Point Energy, SARM, and a member at large, all as voting members for the SODCAP board. We also have Minister of Environment and Environment Canada sitting as a non-voting member, and that's how our governance sort of works. The plan that we were tasked with being an implementation body for is just in its final stages of being, I guess, approved by the federal government. It's gone through its consultation period now, and they're sort of reviewing it. But even for the last couple of years, it's done a couple things. It's given us critical important habitat. It's been mapped out for 13 different species in Southwest Saskatchewan. It's identified specific threats, and it's identified over 60 recovery measures that are important for the recovery of the species. And SODCAP, through some strategic planning, has identified over 30 of them that they want to work on specifically. And we've been working on a number of them up until now. So that's sort of where we come from. As I mentioned, this is a partnership with the stock growers, and because it is a partnership with the stock growers, when we put together this proposal, we identified an area, larger than the South Divide itself. The South Divide on the screen, the picture you're looking at on the screen right now, is the yellow component. But for the purpose of this proposal, we wanted to target the entire Southwest, and that includes the Missouri Coteau and the Greater Sandhills. And for the most part, critical habitat for species risk are not identified in the Sandhills and the Missouri Coteau, but it's not a stretch of the imagination that they would be good for grassland birds. And even though they're not officially mapped, the only major species that are really mapped in those areas, or in the Missouri Coteau anyway, is the piping plover. And there's a few other hotspots through CDC that we see when we're looking through the maps. What we said was, what we would do was we would probably try to spend at least 75% of our efforts in the sod area, and look to spend about 25% in the rest of the areas. But we do have interest from producers that want to work with us in the rest of the Southwest. So so I guess why are we looking at these areas? Well, for one thing, there's a lot of grass. The South Divide has over 50% native grasslands and over 75%, perennial cover. And, why? Well, probably, it's a combination of climate, soils, the ranching culture that exists in Southwest Saskatchewan. So the grasslands have been retained in that area, and that basically provides, habitat for not only species risk, but other species as well, too. The critical important habitat that has been mapped in the Southwest, too, is basically a direct overlap of the native grasslands. And not only the 13 species, but there's other species that are coming on board in the last little while, including the chestnut-colored long-spurred Phrygianus hawk. So it's more than 13 species. It's actually up to 15, and I would suspect there's more going to be coming on. So again, like the amount of grass in the area is extremely important, and it's one of the reasons that we focused on this area. Not because anybody's doing anything wrong, but because it's kind of like the last refuge for these species, and it's probably the focus for to work on these areas. So before I go on and talk about, give you an update of the project that's going on there, and I just wanted to run through some pictures of the area and give you an idea of what the grasslands in that area look like. And I imagine, because you're interested in this, you've probably all driven through Southwest Saskatchewan and you've seen some of the grasslands, and it is probably as close to shortgrass prairie as you're going to find in the province here. So this is near Council. It's on fairly really thin type soils, and that pasture is actually in really good shape. The soil and the climate are really restrictive in these areas, and so you don't get a lot of production. But like this is just an example of one of those. Another one near Council, more on some solonetzik type soils. You can see some of the sagebrush in the flat, and kind of the level of productivity. Over towards Grasslands National Park, you see some of the hoodoos. This is on some crown lease, but the hoodoos in the background are the east block of the Grasslands National Park. And this is on, I believe it's Rock Creek, just west of the west block of the Grasslands National Park. As I mentioned too, that we do some work in the Missouri Coteau, and this is just in the river breaks down towards the South Sask River, and where the water is on that area is actually classified as Pipit plover habitat. And these valleys are also home to things like prairie falcon, Phrygianus hawk, golden eagle, all been spotted and identified in there in the last little while. And again, in the Coteau, you'll see sort of mixed grasslands that there. So you're not seeing a lot of bush or woody material in these areas, and it's all grasslands, and it's kind of an idea of what the landscape that we are actually working in that area. So, anyways, so back to the project that we're talking about today is that the project is looking at 6 different options of programming to encourage producers to be involved in species at risk, and make decisions around habitat for species at risk. And the way we're doing this is that I've got a number of people hired, including Callie Williamson, Krista Connick, Todd, Larry Gabrick, Jeremy Pittman, a few others. I keep forgetting who they all are. They're getting to be so many. And what we're doing is we're going out and we're assessing lands that are critical habitat and lands that are producers that have expressed some level of interest, and negotiating projects around these 7 different options, or 6 different options, and I'll talk about them. The other thing that we're doing is we're evaluating both an economic but also a social type evaluation of these agreements. How does it mean to work with the producers and how is that going. And we're doing that through basically a survey process. So, and I'm going to talk about that towards the end of the presentation. So, to start with, the first option that we talked about was results-based conservation agreements. And results-based programming is actually identified as a recovery measure in the multi-species at risk action plan. And so it has been identified as important. The concept is this, is that you identify specific habitat targets for species at risk and let the producer make decisions on his ranch to work towards achieving those targets. And if he does so, then he should be rewarded financially. That's the concept of this thing. The targets right now that we have in place, we do have targets for the greater sage-grouse, Sprague's Pipit, loggerhead shrike, swift fox, and PCAP is actually looking at developing targets for both piping plover and burrowing owl under this year's HSP program that they've got funded. So it's good to see what they're going to have in the works when they're done their project. The benefits of this is one, it's non-prescriptive. Many of the BMPs that have been developed over the years are very, very prescriptive type programming. They will tell you, here's what you have to do in order to get reimbursed for funding. And that's the way they kind of work. This way, we're kind of leaving the decision making up to the producer. The producer makes a decision based on, his goals around livestock production and forage management, but he also starts taking in the needs of the species at risk into the consideration when he starts making his day-to-day operations on the ranch. And so when we're starting to look at these targets and achieving these targets, we're expecting the producer to go over and above what we consider, normal agricultural practices, and not just be a consequence of retention of the grasslands. The targets are based on the current state of knowledge, and we are trying to adapt them as we go along. And that's coming about by meeting with species experts. We had MSc candidate out in the field with us this year, and I think Phil Rose is his name, and he's going to be, giving a presentation. I heard Kyla say later on. So we're working with these people to make sure that, we have the most up-to-date knowledge on habitat targets that we can do, and we adapt the targets as we go along. The other thing is that, obviously they have to be measurable and they have to be quantifiable. That means that we're looking at things that we can measure with things like a Robel pole or a quadrat, and we're setting up our deliverables based on that. The other thing we always have to be aware of is that the ecosites in these areas can be quite limiting. So we can't want producers to produce habitat targets that are outside the ecological potential. You can't make a tall grass prairie out of a sagebrush flat. So we just have to be aware of what the limits of the soils are, what the limits of the climate are, and when we're setting these targets. Talk about a couple of the types of agreements that we're working on, and we're doing the greater sage-grouse under a separate agreement because we actually got some money about 2 years ago to actually initiate this, but it was just focused on the EPO area, and it was focused on the greater sage-grouse. And the 5 attributes are listed there for you. Basically, silver sage, making sure a measure of how robust it is, what the structure like by, and we use the Robel pole as measuring visual obstruction on the silver sage plants themselves. We know that it's very important for food and it's important for cover. We also are measuring grass height or the droop height as a measurement of health of the range and for cover for the birds. Forbs are measured. They're important for feed, especially for the chicks. And we look at some of the range health attributes, exposed soil and litter, and we want to make sure that we got enough litter to provide cover, but we don't want too much that we inhibit the movement of the chicks and we inhibit the movement of the hens. We've got to make sure they're covered, but we've got to make sure that they can move around as well too and escape. So far right now we actually have 6 agreements signed in the southwest of the province, and the total annual payout on those 6 agreements is $65,000, and it covers about 20,000 acres, and it's all located within the emergency protection order area. And what we've been doing up until now is that Kelly and Krista have been out monitoring the habitat this last summer. We had a summer student, Sean McNaughton, went out and assisted Phil Rose, who actually did a bunch of the grassland bird inventory on the sites where we did some of the projects. So and I haven't seen the results yet, but it'll be interesting to see what kind of numbers they come up with. But as far as meeting the targets, everybody that we've signed agreements with has met their targets, and we have funding in place for 2 years to complete this, and then we're going to have to see where we go from there. The other species that we are focusing on is the Sprague's Pipit. It's more of an uplands grassland type bird, and the attributes that we're looking at is range condition. We want to make sure that we've got a native range, and we want it in good condition. We also have some sort of measurement of visual obstruction, again by the Robel pole, so that there is areas to hide in these areas. And the other criteria that we didn't originally have was litter, but after talking to Dr. Steve Davis and Phil, we felt that was one of the most important things that we need to measure is the amount of litter. And when we talked about the adaptation of these targets, we actually went out this summer and we were out in the field, and what it looks like is that the range of litter should be somewhere between that 300 and 900 pounds per acre, and that's based on what the species experts are telling us, and what they've seen out in the field. So again, you want some to have cover, but you don't want to have too much, because that inhibits them. And some of the other species like McCowan's and Sprague's and chestnut-colored longspur start to vacate these areas after they get too much litter. And so I think it's important that we understand that there's a target in that area that we want to work for. Right now, we've been in negotiations and conversations with about 13 different producers on grassland habitat that would contain Sprague's Pipit habitat. And it covers, and these 13 producers probably cover or are responsible for managing about 80 to 100,000 acres of habitat. And some of it is in the Missouri-Coteau, and some is in the South of Divide area. We managed to assess over half of those acres right now, and we're working, probably trying to continue assessments into the fall here, and if once the snow comes in, we'll probably move into next year. But this fall, then what we'll do is we start negotiating contracts with these producers on results based, and not all of them will become results based agreements. We may be looking at sort of habitat management agreements with these producers, depending on the situation that exists for the producers as well. The other thing that we always have to be aware of and cognitive of is that this is a multi-species risk project, and most of these sites that we're looking at right now are containing critical habitat for anywhere from 4 to 7 species at risk. And so when we're promoting one thing, we want to make sure that we're not having a negative impact on some of the other species that exist in the area. So that I know this is really, really small type in there, but this map shows habitat for not only greater sage grouse and spragues, but also things like the curlew and northern leopard frog, swift fox, McCowan's longspur. So it's important to realize that we are dealing with multiple species, and we want to have a positive impact for all species, not just one. So I think that's important. The second habitat option we thought we would promote would be that what we call habitat management agreements. And the big difference here is that there's no prerequisite for producers to meet specific habitat targets, and in some cases the habitat targets for the species may actually be outside the control of the producer. And the example I want to use here is like the swift fox, and I've listed off the habitat targets that are listed for swift fox. So they need large areas of grassland, and in the area of about 14,000 square kilometers is optimal for them. Well, not a lot of producers own that much land, so it's more of a landscape approach you need to take this. They are impacted by topography. They're impacted by road density. Again, the producer really doesn't have any impact on those kind of things. The other thing is that the range health and the range condition really aren't a criteria. They like to live where it's healthy with problems are better, and the range condition has to be fair, better, and to be quite honest, producers as part of their management for livestock and forage production should be doing that anyways. So it's sort of not going over that normal agricultural practices. So what we have to do is we have to sit back and we have to say, well, let's take a different look at this, and let's explore habitat management agreements where we lay out a plan that includes some items and contract the producers to sign up on that and determine the cost. So again, using swift fox as an example, we would like to have a range management plan in place that actually talks about range management and grassland management, and to date we've got about 3 guys that we're in negotiation with, and we've signed one agreement. And what we've done is we've gone out, we've done the assessments like the range health and range condition assessment, and come up with a plan that we've negotiated with the producer or discussed with the producer. And it's, for the most part, these ones have been simple. It's been, in one case, sort of a modified switchback system. The other one, it's sort of a rest rotation type system with deferment on the shorelines. And so something very, there is some active management in place, but it's actually very extensive type management. So none of it involves intensive, movement of cattle. It's typically like a 6-week rotation in one field at a fairly moderate stocking rate. So the other thing is that we do actually build in things like the one agreement we said, okay, there's no controlling badgers. You got to let the badgers grow so that they can build burrows for swift fox. And we discussed that with the producers, and after long discussion, of saying, well, why can't we do that? They said they'd never actually shot a badger on that pasture anyway, so not a big deal. The other thing that we're looking at too is actually getting guys involved in the awareness and the education around this. So we've contracted some of them to actually hire species experts to do an inventory of the grassland birds that exist on some of the upland prairies. We've looked at assessments allowing them to hire professionals to actually do grassland assessments, so that they get more involved in the actual management and looking at the data, what's on their land, so that they have an idea of what birds they are. And in the one case, we're going to get a guy to go out, and he's actually going to hire him to go out and assess the grassland bird inventory on the uplands, and he'll probably be focusing on the three species: the McCowans, the Spragues, and chestnut-colored longspur. But he's also going to be seeing what else is out there. And then to complement that, we're going to try to feed in sites off the CDD, give him information on what he's got on his land. And I know on the one case that we've talked to, the guy's he's got Phrygian hawks out there already, and he's got some golden eagles. So it's getting him more involved in the management of this thing. So it's not just funding a BMP. It's actually developing a whole management plan that includes grass management, and it includes education, and it includes specific activities targeted towards species at risk. And like I said, right now we're in negotiations with about 3, looking at about 6, ranging in a cost of somewhere between $16,000 and $30,000, and impacting close to about 20,000 acres. So that's actually, it's coming along good. We're still in negotiation phase on those things, but kind of excited about the way we're going on this. The third option is sort of the habitat restoration option. And here, basically what we're doing is we're taking cultivated land and restoring it to some resemblance of habitat. And the habitat that we're trying to get to is depending on the ecological potential for that site. So in the one case where we've done this, it was on Solonetsy type flats. So we've actually, in addition to native grass seeding, we've actually hand plugged in seedlings of sagebrush. So that's it. The other ones we've looked at is we've contacted producers that have cultivated land next to critical habitat, asked if they were interested in doing seeding land back to native species, and then if they were, soliciting bids from them to do this. And right now, we've got 2 producers signed up, and 2 more in the works. Spending now, like our budget, we're approaching like that $130,000 on restoration over 4 different projects. And what that's working out to right now, including the cost of seed, is about $250 an acre to do restoration. So it is somewhat expensive, but if you're going to have truly want to have impact on species habitat, this is one of the major ways to do this, is to put land back into cover and create more habitat. Obviously, your competition is what in the last couple of years has been good commodity prices, in particular things like lentils, and in particular in the Southwest, where it's a good region for growing lentils. It's been very difficult to actually get people to sign up, to seed some land back to grass when they're looking at anywhere from 40 to 70 cent pound lentils. So again, some competition out there, and it's just something we're going to have to work around and see if we can find producers that are interested in tackling this type of project. So it's been interesting, and it has been somewhat challenging. So. The fourth option we talk about is grass banking, and grass banking has been tried in the States, and it's been tried in Alberta, particularly with conservation-based organization that own and manage a particular piece of land for conservation purposes. And the whole concept is to use that land to leverage conservation benefits on private landowners. And to give you an example, like the Nature Conservancy in Malta, Montana, has the Matador Ranch there, and they lease out their ranch to a group of producers adjacent to it called the Rancher Stewardship Alliance Montana version, at a reduced rate in return for conservation benefits that can be measured on the landscape. So what they're trying to do is actually use their land to increase their area of influence on a larger land base. So when we said we try to do this in Southwest Saskatchewan, obviously the first thing we tried to do was try to find, well, who owns land in that area. And obviously, you look at companies like Saskatchewan Wildlife Federation and Ducks Unlimited, Nature Conservancy of Canada, and to be honest with you, that in the sod area, there's really only one significant block of land, and that's the Old Man on its back Prairie. So what we did was we contracted Nature Conservancy of Canada to investigate developing a grass banking strategy that would work for them and that would work for the patrons that are currently leasing their lands on the Old Man. And that's sort of underway right now, and hopefully we will be meeting with the patrons this fall and having a discussion to see if we can actually work something out and have an agreement that works for both. The Wildlife Federation, there wasn't really significant Wildlife Federation lands in the Southwest, and same with Ducks Unlimited, there really wasn't the significant parcels that we thought we could investigate. The other option that we did investigate was Sask Parks. They do have some land, but reception to this was somewhat chilly, and but they have left the door open to negotiate further. So we're going to see where that goes as well. So, but for now we've got one on the go with the Nature Conservancy, and kind of excited to see where this is going to go in the next year or so. So, the fifth option is what we call niche product branding, and basically what we're looking here is for producers that are already direct marketing beef, but at the same time they're sourcing some of their stock or some of their calves out of areas that are raised on grasslands and raised on critical habitat for species at risk. And the idea is that we use that to build a marketing tool to promote beef that's compatible with species at risk. And not a big money ticket thing here. We're probably looking at developing some advertising and some video loops and some logos and just promoting it as an additional marketing tool to producers. So right now we've got one agreement either close to signing or signed already, and in negotiations with another one. We didn't want to set up a guy right from scratch. We want to look for guys who are actually doing this already. And the one I have on the screen is the guy that actually markets his beef to the Calgary's farmer market, and all the calves that he raises come out of the Southwest area. And they're not only his, but they're neighbors that he buys as well too. But they're all sourced out of that Southwest part of the province, and it's all kind of linked to greater sage-grouse habitat. The idea is here, do you attract more people, and can you add a premium to it? So again, we're following up on this. The last option that we looked at was what we called term conservation easements, and the difference between the conservation easements that have been in the past is that the ones that have been signed up until now have been in perpetuity. When we did that survey, almost everybody we talked to said that they were not interested in conservation easements in perpetuity. They just flat out said no. About 30% said that they would consider a specified length of time. So we said, well, okay, let's explore this. And so the other thing that was the existing agencies, for whatever reason, either the cost or their funding agencies didn't like it, didn't want to sign term easements themselves. So the stock growers decided to look into creating some entity that could actually hold easements. And so that's ongoing right now. We did some mapping exercises of lands that would be eligible for easements in the south of the divide. And there's only about 8% of critical habitat that is privately owned. Most of 92% is actually crown land or federal land, and wouldn't be eligible for an easement anyways. So what we've done, we've mapped all that out, and we've cross-referenced it with landowners, and it's actually been a very tedious process for our GIS girl, Michelle. But we've done that, trying to identify the ones with bigger blocks of privately owned lands. And then what we want to do is go back to those people and just see if they would be interested and do this. And right now, we've got 3 producers that have expressed somewhat of an interest in it, and on a total of about 4,500 acres. What we have to do is we have to do an appraisal to determine what the cost would be, like you would do another easement, but then we have to take into consideration, what's the effect of just a term on the cost of the thing too. So, I mean, that's where we are right now. We've got some producers interested. We've identified some appraisers that maybe we want to look at, and we want to start doing some assessments. But in the meantime, stock growers are exploring creation of the entity to do this, and that takes some time and has to involve lawyers and all that sort of thing. So, and this one option is something that the stock growers are doing on their own. The SODCAP board decided that they felt that there was maybe too much negative around conservation easements, so they said, well, let's let stock growers do this on their own, and let's see where it goes. So, not a big deal. And that's what we're doing. We're waiting to see, if there's going to be some uptake. But and there has been. There's some interest. Nobody's beating down the door or anything, but it's there are some nice sites that we have looked at that I think would be good. So those are the 6 options. Now, on all the options, what we want to do is an economic valuation. Basically, we want to determine what the cost of management is above the cost of normal agricultural practices. And we're going to try to do this through the creation of a survey. We've actually created a survey where we interview producers that are involved in any one of these 6 different kinds of options. And then we want to determine, well, okay, what are you guys doing, in the results phase? What are you guys doing to achieve those results? What are you doing in the habitat management agreements to manage for species risk? What's the cost of restoration? What is the cost of marketing? And we're doing this through a survey. We've actually interviewed and surveyed all the producers that were signed up for the Greater Sage-Grouse agreements. And then what we do is we have a couple of economists hired that evaluate the data and come back to us with a cost of these agreements. However, in the meantime, we've had to, in order to sign some agreements, we've actually had to use literature to determine the costs of signing these agreements, so we know what we can, give a ballpark figure, what we can pay these producers for signing up with us too. So it's an ongoing process, and but for example, the results-based agreements, we're paying out based on $3.50 an acre, based on some of the
the literature that we did see. Having interviewed the producers and looking at some preliminary results, that number I am anticipating is going to be low, and the costs of management are probably higher. The habitat management agreements, the two that we've sort of penciled out right now, all depends on the management activities. And the one agreement was $16,000 for impacts on about 11,000 acres. The other one that we've penciled out is about 29,000 on 6,000 acres. So it's going to depend on what kind of management it costs. Those are going to be our two big ones. And like I said, you know, roughly penciling out restoration is about $250 an acre, and then the marketing stuff is actually relatively cheap. Most of it's like $1,000. So, anyways, somehow we are going to have to, you know, we have a 5-year agreement right now. We have funding through Environment Canada under the SARPAL agreement. We have a couple years of funding under the Greater Sage-Grouse agreement. We've received a little bit of money through the Saskatchewan Beef Industry Development Fund, but you know, we're confined by a time limit here to keep doing this. So we're going to have to explore funding this long term if some of these program options, you know, prove to be beneficial. And obviously, my thinking is that, you know, species risk is very much a public good, so there's got to be, you know, some public funds kicked into this, either through, you know, Ministry of Environment or through Environment Canada. But there's other things that we can do. So we can explore, you know, mitigation, where you know, companies have done unavoidable damages and they pay into some sort of conservation banking. We can look at agencies that like to fund these kind of things and make more proposals to them. And again, the creation of a foundation or an entity, you know, maybe somebody that can, you know, be charitable and can take donations. And we can explore all the avenues for funding if we want to truly have an impact on some of the species at risk that exist in the Southwest. So I guess that's kind of it for now. I'm going to turn it back over to Kayla here, and I'll leave you with my contact information, and feel free to contact me anytime you want to. The other contract there is like the stockholders are part of this, so you know, Chadwick Person is the executive director with them too, so feel free to love him as well.
All right, thank you very much, Tom, for that presentation, and we will go over some questions now. All right, first question, is the $250 per acre cost of restoration per year until the area is considered restored?
Yes. The answer to that is they penciled, when we talked about restoration, we included costs of seed, we include the costs of seeding, of seedbed prep, of weed control, and then basically 2 years of non-use, so that their lost opportunities are taken into consideration. And the agreements on restoration are 21 years in length. So yeah, that's where we came up with the numbers on that.
Perfect, thank you. One more question, so feel free to keep typing in questions if you have any that came up during the presentation. So the last question for now is recognizing the relativeness in early stages of these agreements. Has SODCAP encountered any issues monitoring its signed agreements? Do they see any foreseeable issues with enforcement of these agreements in the future?
No, I don't see any issues with enforcement, because you know, the concept is on the results-based one is that, you know, you meet your targets, you receive some sort of payment, so you meet your obligations right there. Habitat management agreements, well, one of the things that we're doing all the time is you know, trying to get a handle on, you know, for lack of a better word, the conservation ethic of the producer. You know, is he there with some intent to actually have an impact positively on the environment, or is he there just trying to get some paycheck? So we're kind of trying to be picky on the people that we work with, especially for this type of project right up front. So again, I don't foresee any major issues, and this is very exploratory in where what we would like to do is provide recommendations back to the federal government at the end of 5 years to have, you know, future programming. What's the best way to have programming that allows producers to be innovative and independent? So.
Perfect, thank you. Next question. What's the extent of collaboration with the multi-species conservation groups in southeast Alberta, particularly with sage-grouse conservation?
There's a couple things we're doing. Mainly, it's information sharing. But you know, we've been fortunate enough to you know, link in with both Multi-SAR and the Milk River Watershed Council of Canada on some of their activities. We've been linking into a transboundary grassland workshop that was started, you know, led by the Prairie Conservation Forum out of Alberta. So we're trying to link with our neighbors in Montana and in Alberta, but you know, focusing on doing work here in the province. So.
Next question. How do you engage producers to participate in your programs? What have you had success with and what has not worked so well?
Well, actually, one of our greatest assets is that we have a GIS person working with us right now. Michelle Lanoy is a GIS technician, and she's just fabulous. She you know, anytime you ask her to draw a map or draft up a map, she does it right away, and that's one of our biggest tools to identifying areas. So she has all the data at her fingertips. We can ask her to, if you know, for conservation easements, you know, go to her and say, listen, we need to know who owns all the privately owned critical habitat in Southwest Saskatchewan, and come up with a list. And then we look at that list, and there's 13,000 people on it. And then we say, well, that's too many. Okay, who has big blocks? And then you narrow it down, and then you actually do some door knocking. Same with conservation or with restoration. We look at the maps. Where are the areas that have potential for restoration, and cross-reference it with RM maps, and basically start door knocking and phone calling. And to be honest, you know, that's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to do a one-on-one with these producers to see if they're interested. You know, we do talk to them in group meetings and extension events and things like that, but the real work comes down when you're talking with these guys one-on-one. And you know, like I said, you know, we could target 50 guys and maybe get 1 or 2 agreements out of that whole thing. But that's the way you approach this, and you do it not just in one visit. It ends up being, I don't know, 3 or 4 visits. I'm working with a producer right now, and we're on our 3rd or 4th visit right now. And nothing's been signed. We've done a little bit of assessments, but we're talking back and forth. And, you know, he just has to take it back and think about it.
Perfect, thank you. Well, it looks like that it might be all the questions for now, but I'm just going to show you our website quickly, so feel free, if another question pops into your head, please feel free to type it, and Tom can still answer that for you. So you can find all of our, I guess the link to this presentation when it's uploaded onto our YouTube page, as well as all of our past presentations that have been recorded on our website, pcap-sk.org. Under the Communications tab, you'll see the Native Prairie Speaker Series. So all of our links to watch the presentation will be there. And this presentation should be uploaded tomorrow, so you'll be able to find that link here within the next couple of days. And I should also put a plug in for our 2017 Native Prairie Restoration Reclamation Workshop. Registration will open up in early October as well. The draft program will be up in early October for everyone to look at. Right now, some of our themes include restoration of wildlife and plant species at risk, the power partnerships, and range health and soil remediation. So mark your calendars for that one. And it doesn't look like we have any questions, but you will receive a follow-up email as soon as you close the webinar, and you will be emailed tomorrow as well. There is a quick survey in there. Please take the 60 seconds to fill it out, and it'll help with some of our funding requirements. As well in that email will be Tom's contact information, so if you do have any further questions for him or just want to chat with him about something, do feel free to contact him. So finally, I would just like to again say that in-kind support for this project was given by the South of the Divide Conservation Action Plan, and that financial support for this project was given by the Government of Canada and the Federal Department of the Environment and Climate Change Canada. So thank you very much everyone for joining, and thank you again Tom for giving that presentation to us, and keep your eyes open for the link and pass it around if you want. Thank you everyone, have a good day.